Transformers, robots in disguise. Okay, so last time we were talking here, moments ago, we had an issue with the power company and the consumer. The power companies wanted to output huge amounts of voltages into your homes, like 24,000 volts, 500,000 volts, a million volts if they could. But you want 240. So how do we go about this? Well, this idea of a direct current with Ohm's law, V equals IR, that's not going to cut it. We need to expand our horizon, and we need to move away from this idea of a DC current. We need to go into an alternating current, okay? When we look at an alternating current, we can use something known as a transformer. And you actually have transformers around you in life all the time. You know those bricks that your phones use? You plug the brick into the wall and you plug the USB end into the brick in order to charge your phones? That's a transformer. I've got a neon light here behind me, and if we take a look at it, at the bottom of it here, there's that kind of like black brick right there. That's a transformer. If you look outside your home and you've got light poles on the street and they've got those gray cylindrical boxes there, those are transformers. And if you don't have light poles on your street, although lines are buried underground, but you've got those like green boxes on the ground that, you know, you put a few shrubs around so nobody sees it, there's transformers inside of there. Transformers are everywhere. We use them so often in life, and it's because we can use this idea of an alternating current to get these high voltages from the power companies down to small voltages for the consumers. So let's take a look at just how a transformer works. So first what we're going to do with the transformer is we're going to kind of build some like laminating sheath to it. Okay, and what's going to happen here is on one side of the transformer, we're going to have a wire come in, and this wire comes in and it has some loops on it. Okay, now this isn't exactly drawn to scale. I'm a terrible drawer, we all know that. But it's got some number of loops on one side. Then on the other side here, it has a different amount of loops. Okay? Now, the reason why this is because if we think about this, if I bring in a current through this edge here, I'm going to have a current going through these loops. If I have a current going through these loops, I am going to create, via the right-hand rule, a B field. So a B field is generated. Now the interesting thing about this is that, and we can't see it from my diagram here, but these coils, when they're actually built, we kind of think about like stacking them within each other. Okay, it's kind of hard to draw, but you can like stack them within each other. You can change the geometries of the system so that whenever you have a B field generated by the current, you're actually going to get all of that B field through the other side. Wait, we didn't have a B field and then we have a B field? That's a change in flux. But since we're alternating the current, the B field all of a sudden is going to flip because my current's going to go the other direction now, and when it happens, my B field flips to the other direction, which means, oh, look at that, my flux just changed again. And if we do this repeatedly, we're going to keep having a constant change of flux, and that will allow us to have a constant, well, not exactly a constant, but it's going to allow us to generate an EMF over and over and over and over and over again, okay? And we actually see this EMF as an alternating current. So the EMF isn't just one value. It's not like, here's the EMF. The EMF will actually oscillate back and forth. This is the alternating current, and that's actually what we want in order to power our homes. What we can say from this is that on these coils, we can have a primary coil and a secondary coil. And your primary coil is just whatever coil you're like starting with, and your secondary coil is just whatever coil that you're ending with, okay? So if you had a step-up transformer, that would be like you had initially 100 volts, but you want to get it to 10,000 volts. This is a step up. And in this case, you know, this is your primary and this is your secondary. You're just stepping up. We can also have step down if you're going from like, you know, your 10,000 volts and you want to go down to 100. In this case, this is your primary and this is your secondary. This is just a step down. Okay? So they're not crazy ideas here, but we've got a primary and secondary coil. and your primary coil has some number of loops, and your secondary coil has some number of loops to it. Okay? What's really, really cool about the actual engineering and design of this is we're actually able to keep something like 99.9% of the magnetic flux is actually being grabbed by the other coil. So there's very little energy lost in transformers, which is awesome. They're nearly perfect. Well, and for our case of purposes, they will be perfect. So what this essentially allows us to say is that if you have an EMF, then your voltage in the secondary coil is going to equal the number of turns in the secondary coil, and then multiplied by some change in flux amount, right? This is the delta flux divided by delta T. In this case, we put the N on the outside. We don't include it with the flux because we're talking about the secondary coil here. And you actually know this flux amount. You know the flux amount here. You know that has to be equal to the voltage in the primary coil times a change in time divided by the number of turns in the primary coil. Because you know that as that primary coil is getting this current going through it, you can say that, hey, look, this voltage is being generated here in the primary, and we have a number of coils there that's causing this change of flux to occur. So if we dump this in and we kind of combine these equations here, what we're going to have is that our voltage in the secondary coil is going to be due to the number of turns in the secondary coil divided by a delta T, that's the delta T right here. And then this is multiplied by the change of flux, which is the voltage in the primary, delta T over the number of coils in the primary. And as we see, our delta T's lovely go away. And we actually get a really cool ratio here. We get a ratio, I'm going to move the VP down to the other side. We see a ratio that the voltage in the secondary compared to the voltage in the primary is equal to the number of turns in the secondary over the number of turns in the primary. So you can change a voltage. You can scale a voltage up, you can scale it down just based off of the ratio of the number of turns you have. And that's it, which is a really, really awesome and amazing idea. The only catch to this is that you need this to be in alternating current, because you need for this current to these B fields to flip back and forth, up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. You need to jump, 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 jump. So they go jump, 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 jump. So we keep generating this change in flux. Okay, so that's what's going on here with the transformer. And because of this, what we actually have is, for the power companies, whenever they're creating the power, they can generate power, at a very low voltage. They can generate it at 100 to 1,000 volts, and then they'll have these step-up transformer stations. They have a substation here, which has got some transformers on it. I'm a bad drawer, but we can jump it up to 10,000 here, and then we can have a larger substation where we kick it up to 500,000 volts. And then these are on the high power transmission lines. We can send these very far away. Because I ran so far away. When they get out here, they can come back down to a substation. And these are often, if you're driving around your community, you'll find these behind chain link fences, and you're like, what's all that electric stuff there? But we can step these down once again to somewhere between 50 and 20,000 volts. Once they're on the 20,000 volts, they'll run across lines to your house, and then on those last few little stations here, they'll actually be bumped down to the series of 120, which make your 240 that you need for your house. So we actually do, for those very long stretches which the power companies are running, we do keep a very high voltage, and that's why it is said hey, high voltage power line, do not touch, go away, because they're super dangerous. And it's actually a very dangerous job if you're one of the workers on these high power or high voltage transmission lines. They often are super high up off the ground. Normally you need a helicopter to get to them. This is my drawing of a helicopter. I don't know why it has feet and a face, but it's a helicopter. Pew, pew, thump, 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 thump. It's a very dangerous job simply because you're at a huge voltage. Boom, you're gonna flash fry. But yeah, it's how we can get a ton of electricity without losing it all the way home to you, the consumer. And in the end, it is just a series of transformers that's doing that, given by this equation right here. So kind of a cool thing. We can also, if we take this equation and look at voltages, we can actually turn this into currents as well. We could write it another way. We could say that the current in the secondary coil, why did I write that as a capital I? I don't know. I think with transformers you typically write it with a capital I, but if you want to write this with a lowercase I, nothing wrong with that. But it's proportional to, so the current in the secondary coil over the current in the primary coil is equal to the number of loops in the primary per number of loops in the secondary. So it looks very similar to the voltage equation, but we see that the primary and secondary have been flipped from what they were before. So just keep that in mind. And like I said, if you are stepping up, you're increasing your voltage. If you're stepping down, you're decreasing it. Traditionally what this means is that if your secondary coils are greater than your primary coils, then you have a step up. Likewise, if your secondaries are less than the primaries, you are step down. Okay? So that's just what's going on there. One kind of final note on this is you could actually create or use a transformer for DC current. The trick to it, though, is you can only do it like once. You know, if we look at our kind of diagram we drew up here, we needed these B fields to flip over and over and over again, and we did that by flipping the current back and forth, which for a generator, which we have at a power plant, that's actually a very easy thing to do because the current's going up and down, up and down, up and down as it rotates. But you could do the same thing if you said current on, current off, current on, current off, current on, current off. And that's just flipping a switch. So one of the things we actually see this for is whenever you go to start your car, what's actually happening is whenever you turn that key, or nowadays I guess you press the button, it is actually turning on and off a starter in your car, which is just really a big transformer, in order to up the voltages to allow your car to start burning gasoline and get those kind of cycles going. But it's really just turning things on and off, on and off, on and off very quickly for a little bit. So yeah, that's how just ignition systems like that work. So kind of a cool thing with these transformers that we see here. But they're really, really basic and straightforward. It's a really simple idea, but we use it all the time in daily life. And if you've got an old brick that you're like, I don't need this anymore, and you smash it up with a hammer, you'll see it. It's a little thing right there. It's got a bunch of coils wrapped around it. Normally they're wrapped in a little bit of yellow, and that's it. Okay, so that's the idea of transformers. It's not physics in disguise. They're not robots either. It's just a really simple, straightforward way of how we can kind of transfer our electricity. And with that, this is finished. You're able to complete all of that intergalactic, especially the one with the cool neon signs. But for now, that's adios, and you take it easy.